Hello everyone and welcome to Sunup. I'm Lyndall Stout. On the heels of the most challenging wheat crop in more than 50 years, thanks to summer rain, there's optimism as Oklahoma wheat producers shift into decision-making mode, deciding which varieties they'll plant this fall. We begin today with a wheat update. Here's Sunup's Dave Deacon and Extension small grain specialist Jeff Edwards.
Well, Jeff, there's a lot of producers thinking about this year's wheat crop, and there's different production styles. Let's talk about grain-only wheat.
When we talk about grain-only producers, we can almost divide them into two categories. We have some producers that are maybe on a little bit more productive soil, maybe has a little bit more reliable yield production history, and they're going to push more for yield potential. And a few varieties that those growers might consider would be something like Ruby Lee. Now, Ruby Lee is an excellent grain-only wheat. It's a decent forage wheat as well, but it's not tolerant of low soil pH, and the disease resistance package on Ruby Lee isn't that great, so it's going to need a fungicide most years. And they can also go with some of the varieties that have good disease resistance, but also have very good top-end yield potential, something like Gallagher. WB Cedar is another variety that has very good yield potential in a high production environment. Our other grain-only producers, we have some others that are more of a limited input system, and maybe the production isn't as reliable or consistent, so they're looking at really controlling those inputs. So if I'm in that situation, a few things that I'm going to look at, most likely I'm going to need low soil pH tolerance, and I'm going to need very good disease resistance. So some things that would work in that area would be something like Gallagher. Again, has very good disease resistance and tolerance to low soil pH. Our old standby Duster works well in those systems, just a very tough wheat with a very broad area of adaptation. And another variety, as long as the soil pH is about 5.5 or above, that works well in those situations would be Iba. Did very well in our state trials last year. If you look at a variety that performed very well across the entire state, broad area of adaptation, Iba fits that bill, has a very good disease resistance, one of the sons of Duster, and has a good test weight and an improved seed size over Duster.
Okay, let's talk about if we're going to run cattle and then have a grain crop. What are we looking at?
All right, so what we're going to look for there is something that pops out of the ground quickly and makes a lot of forage, high tillering ability and can tolerate the grazing, and something I really like to see in those dual purpose varieties, especially if we're planting early in September, is Hessian fly resistance, because that can really come back to get us if we do not have that resistance. So a couple of go-to varieties. Again, we look at Duster. It's kind of my gold standard that I use to compare everything with. Very high tillering ability, forage production. Then you have one of the sons of Duster, Gallagher. It's going to offer improved disease resistance over Duster. It's Hessian fly resistant, just like Duster, and it has acid soil tolerance. Forage production on Gallagher is going to be as good as, if not better than Duster. The only area where maybe it falls a little short, and this comes into play next spring, would be with Gallagher. You're going to need to have the cattle off a good week to 10 days earlier than you would with Duster.
Okay, let's talk about the producer that's only going to run cattle.
If you're just running cattle, we're strictly concerned about forage.
Right.
So we could look at a couple of onless varieties, especially if you're in a graze out system. We have Pete, we have Deliver, and Tam 401. All of those are good choices. Each one of them has a strength over and above the other one. Pete, probably a better fit for southwest Oklahoma. Deliver, maybe a little better fit for northwestern Oklahoma. If you don't have to have the onless characteristic, I'm going to go back to our standard variety, and Duster is just pretty doggone tough to beat because it tillers out well, makes a lot of forage. It's an on variety, but if you're willing to forego the ons or not worry about that, it's pretty tough to beat Duster.
Okay, let's talk about some of the, what producers in the Panhandle, what wheat varieties they should look at.
Well, you know, we tend to focus in on low soil pH tolerance and everything, and that's such an issue downstate, but in the Panhandle we're the opposite, where we have high soil pH, so that doesn't come into issue as much. Really what we're looking for is something that has good drought tolerance if we're talking about dry land in the Panhandle. Winterhawk is a variety that's done very well. Tam 112, Tam 113, both of those have done well. Iba has done very well in the Panhandle for us, not only dry land, but under irrigated. We had some very, very good irrigated yields of Iba out in the Panhandle this year. So it's one that provides quite a bit of versatility both in dry land and irrigated production in the Oklahoma Panhandle.
Okay, there are producers out there that are just looking to hang on to the sandy soil that they have, maybe planting peanuts in a rotation. What variety would be good for them?
For those producers that are just wanting to hold the ground, really what I want them to do is think of themselves as a forage producer, because that's what they're trying to do, is just make biomass. And for those situations, they need something with a high tillering ability that hops out of the ground quickly and covers the ground quickly. So in that case, we've got our standby, we've got Duster. Gallagher would be a good choice as well, and Fannin, which is an AgriPro variety, would work well in those situations.
Okay, there are producers out there that are holding on to their seed from last year. What's your advice for planting this year, and is there a way that they can introduce some new seed into that?
If you're a farmer saving your own seed to plant back on your own farm, then my recommendation is to never be more than 1 year away from certification. That's a fairly easy way to do a pretty good job of maintaining a seed purity. So let's say I was going to plant Gallagher and wanted to save seed from that. So I would purchase some certified Gallagher this fall and plant it on acreage in a field that was surrounded by maybe saved Gallagher, so it's surrounded by Gallagher, and that way by the time you're into the Gallagher, your combine is pure and you only have Gallagher in the combine. I would add extra nitrogen to that area, and I would most likely treat it with a foliar fungicide to increase seed size. That way you maintain seed purity, and it's a good, just best management practice to have higher quality seed in farmer saved seed. The highest quality is generally going to be certified, but you can get close if you follow those practices.
Okay, all of this will work if we get rain.
If we get rain, and we're going to. The guys at the Mesonet have promised me that this year we will get rain, and it will be better than next. And actually, Al Sutherland signed a document.
Oh, good. Notarized it and everything.
Absolutely. So it's in writing.
Okay. Jeff Edwards, small grain specialist here at Oklahoma State University.